Hello and welcome to the Brutal Iron Gym podcast, where our goal is to cut through the BS and deliver the brutal truth about topics related to health and happiness. So today's topic is nutrition, and we're going to discuss fueling different workouts. So today's topic was brought up with a discussion with one of my clients, who's also a physical therapist, and we were just kind of discussing how it's not common knowledge on how you can best prepare yourself going into workouts nutritionally, depending on the type of workout you do. And there was a lot of conversation behind this, and then a lot of thought processes. And in general, one of the main reasons why I don't talk sometimes about super specifics like this is because overwhelmingly most people don't get the basic stuff right. And yet, like when they hear these kind of special things, they'll cling to these and then try to get these little things right when they're not doing the big things right. And that drives me nuts because you won't get really good results out of the little things. Then you'll think something's wrong with the little thing details when it's not. It's just you didn't have anything right on, like underneath that. So you think of nutrition as like building a building. You have to have a solid foundation. Then when you have the solid foundation, you create the solid framework for the building. And then you put on all the ornamental type things from there. So too often people like the ornamental aspects of nutrition when they don't have the foundation and the framework built first. And then they wonder why the ornaments kind of fall and don't result in the way they wanted. And it's because they were only ornaments. They weren't the actual kind of groundwork of results. So we're going to talk about this today, the topic of how to fuel for different types of workouts. And we're going to discuss workouts like cardio only, strength-based versus bodybuilding versus like CrossFit. And I even want to talk about what do you do differently if you're a vegan or you do a ketogenic style diet. But what I don't want to lose sight of is that none of these small details matter unless you have the big things in place first. So what will happen is you'll spend a lot of time and effort, okay, a lot of energy towards these small things, and you're not going to get great results out of it. And it's not that these small things are incorrect. They don't have the framework underneath them to make the results obvious or make them effective. So it's hard for us, for example, to know what the right type of energy is going into a workout whenever you've missed 2 or 3 meals that day. Okay, so or you're hyper stressed about this or that, or you've been running off caffeine and coffee and stuff and not eating healthy foods. So we might talk today about having like like carb-based meals leading into the workout versus fat-based meals, and how fat digests very slowly. So if I have fat in my meal 30 minutes, say, for example, before the workout, there's no chance in hell my body has a chance to break down that fat and get the energy from it in 30 minutes. So we're going to talk about how carb-based meals will actually give you better energy compared to fat-based meals. However, if you didn't eat breakfast that day, if you haven't had the right amount of protein, you haven't drank enough water throughout the day, you're not going to feel good regardless of whether you go into a workout with a carb-based meal or a fat-based meal. So you might hear this advice, you might try carb-based meal versus a fat one and say, man, I still had no energy, I didn't feel good at all. That information's, bullshit. No. If you didn't have the bases right, you're never going to notice these small nuances on top of the bases. Okay? So let's go through it a little bit, and then we're going to kind of wrap back over the basics again. So cardio-only workouts. And let's say you're doing them for performance. So let's look at sprinting versus endurance based. So if you're doing a workout that day, okay, and all you're going to do is some series of sprints. So you can do a small warm up, get the lower body joints, upper body joints ready, kind of go through your sprint based work, and then you're done. You don't really need anything special for that meal. Going into that workout. You would just need your normal everyday eating, and then maybe before that sprint workout, you can have some glucose, which would I tend to use Gatorade as a great example, but you can use whatever the hell you want. So like Powerade, but it tends to be, I prefer liquid sugars versus hard sugars, like dense sugars. So for example, some people in the gym will eat like gummy bears and stuff like that. And it's not actually that great of an idea because there's gelatin and other kind of product mixed with the sugar, and then your body has to then still take time to break that down. Whereas with liquid sugar, it's instant absorption right away, and you get hydrated at the same time. Whereas if you eat too much like gummy type snacks, that can actually dehydrate you, and because your body's taking water and blood to the stomach to process those gummy bears or whatever the hell you're eating, gummy worms and stuff. So it's better to do liquid glucose, liquid sugars, because again, it hydrates you rather than dehydrates you, and it takes less blood away from the muscles, and it's a faster digestion rate. So liquid sugars are by far the best type of glucose to use, especially when you want instant energy right now. So examples like that we said are like Gatorade, Powerade. Sometimes, like I used to just get the Gatorade like powder and measure it out myself. It was cheaper that way. Sometimes I'll just drink iced tea. If I just have a big container of iced tea, that's fine. You're just looking for liquid sugar. And how much of that depends on your body type, how much muscle mass you have, yada, yada, yada. But you want to drink enough in the sense of what would feel like a normal kind of fluid intake for you. So for some people, that might be 16 ounces, some people's 32 ounces. So somewhere in that range. So what you would do is you would drink some, say 16 ounces. You would do your workout and say, okay, I had good energy. Maybe I could have had a little more. So maybe next time instead of 16, you try 24. That goes well. Next time you try 32. But at 32 ounces, you realize, I kind of felt like it was sloshing around in my belly. Then you would drink less. So it's a little bit of experimentation, but that's what we should focus on for performance-based sprint workouts, is normal eating. Okay, you don't have to eat more or extra at any point in time of the day. Just eat your normal foods and then have liquid glucose right before the training. And how much is right before? It can be, right as you start your warm-ups. That way it has 5-10 minutes to get in your bloodstream. Or you can actually start drinking it, 10 minutes before your warm-up, somewhere around there. So 10-15 minutes down to like right when you start. What about endurance-based cardio? And this would be like if somebody's going to go out and run a couple miles at a time and they're looking for more steady state activity. Okay? So they would still want normal eating. However, they want to focus on the meals, if they're having meals, depending on the time of their running, at 2 to 4 hours before the activity. You could argue, and there's some debate here and there, but I'm going to give some generalities here, is the meals like 3, 4, 5 hours before the run. You can have fats, that's fine. Your body will have time to break that down. The meals like 1 to 2 hours before the run, I would say probably better off having slow digesting carb sources, which would be like more like potatoes, pastas, breads, beans, rice, that kind of stuff. And then you can have small, frequent glucose burst kind of drinks or sips during the run if you want. So I have helped people on the Olympic level, okay, with nutrition for running, whether it's sprinting and endurance-based work. So I do know the fun little nuances and all those things. So I'm well aware of all the individual differences and things. So I'm trying to give some general comments on this stuff. So in general, you'd want normal eating. You can have fats at the meals like 3, 4, 5 hours before the run, and they will contribute to some energy during the run. The meals 1, 2 hours before the run, you want to have carbs, not fats, so your body has time to break down the food and actually be usable energy source. And then you can have some liquid sugar at the start of your running, but chances are you're not going to want to have too much because it'll slosh around, and you have to have a longer duration of energy. So you're going to be relying more on those solid food meals than you ever would on like a glucose drink right at the start. However, you can have glucose little drinks or tablets, and they make little other crazy things out there that you can use during the run. But your main focus, if you're doing endurance-based performance running, is going to be on getting the meals correct. The 3 to 5 hours out meals being correct, and the 1 to 2 hour out meals being correct. That'll be the basis of your energy, rather than the small little kind of glucose drinks. Now, typically the mistakes I see made for performance cardio only workouts, whether they're sprints or endurance, is the person being underfed. They just don't eat or drink enough. So, and chances are sometimes, especially my endurance athletes in the past, they've this isn't always the case, okay? So I'm just talking again in generals here, is they'll have a history of kind of like really severely limited food. So they either like had an eating disorder way back in the day, and they used running as a way of kind of dealing with the being overweight and dealing with the emotional aspects of eating, and or you'll have somebody who's naturally just thin framed, so they don't eat much in the first place. So a lot of the people I work with who do sprint and endurance based performance workouts, they will typically be underfed because that's their normal state. So they normally don't overeat. So I normally have to make sure they eat enough. Okay. The other mistake they'll see is they just eat fats all the time, and like nuts, they'll have so oils, nuts, seeds. They'll have those type of fibrous complex fats and those kind of things, and it won't digest very well into overall energy, even though they'll think it's contributing to a lot of calories. So we need to get them fueled more through correct body friendly digesting fats, and then also having some carb sources in there, but understanding how and when to use the carb sources. And if they have an emotional history connected with nutrition, we want to make sure that the carb sources we use don't spike cravings or spike disordered eating. So those are some things we think of. Now, what if you're doing cardio only just for fat loss? So you're not worried about performance, you just want to take off some body fat. Those just normal eating. You don't have to do anything special. Okay, so just eat like you should eat, not how you actually eat, probably. So, and we're going to talk about this more at the end. But you need to eat how you should eat. Okay, and then you don't really have to do anything extra. One of the main mistakes I see with this is, again, people being underfed and not having their nutrition set up correctly. So they'll do like fasted cardio, for example, meaning I'm going to go out and run around and do activity without any fuel whatsoever in my body. That is a complete train wreck when it comes to lifestyle of nutrition, how you feel, the results you get. It's really, really, really negative to do fasted cardio as a regular routine as a form of body fat control. Okay, so you do want to have food. You just don't need to do anything extra on top of your normal food. Just eat your normal meal that you'd normally have, go do your cardio, eat the normal meal you'd normally have at the next meal time. So you're just going to add cardio in the middle of the day, but you're not going to adjust much for it. Okay? So then, if what about with doing strength workouts? So powerlifting, strongman, or strength-based athletic style training. And this would be the assumption that the workout includes some type of warm-up, some type of heavy-based strength lift, and then maybe a circuit of some kind of like accessory movements. So you might have a warm up for your shoulders, you have a heavy bench press or overhead press, and then maybe you're going to do some, some chest dumbbell chest presses, some tricep press downs, bicep curls, some movements that kind of aid your press after that. So you would want to have your normal way of eating in the sense of like what should be in place. You again want to focus on slow digesting carb-based meals, not fats, carbs. And you want to have liquid glucose beforehand. So the mistakes I see on this all the time is people eating way too damn much before the workout, especially if they're just doing strength, like powerlifting, strongman, and like athletes. Is if this is going to be like an hour to an hour and a half, and included in there are like 5, 6, 7, 8 minute breaks on exercises, you don't need a shit ton of food. Okay, you're actually having more like short burst explosive efforts that does not require a lot of calories. It requires a lot out of your nervous system. It's going to require a lot of sleep in terms of recovery, but you don't need to eat like a whole freaking pizza, okay, to fuel one of these workouts. And you sure as hell don't need a whole freaking pizza after one of these workouts. So this is commonly why people who do powerlifting strongman are fat. Feel free to be slightly offended by that, okay? But that's usually why they don't have peak body composition, is because they overeat around their workouts, thinking their workouts are more demanding than they truly are. They're mentally demanding. They're nervous system-wise demanding, but they're not usually very calorically demanding. Okay, and your recovery is way, way more dependent on sleep than it is on food when you do strength-based training. Okay, the other mistake we see all the time is people eating too much on their off days. So if you're not exercising that day, you do not need to eat like, some psychopath worrying about protein like every 5 minutes, having, 2 grams of protein per pound of body weight, and then having, all these other calories and stuff on top. You're not doing anything. Okay. Whereas if you look at a bodybuilder where they might train 5, 6, 7 days a week and their volume is astronomical in terms of overall working sets and the amount of work that they do in their workout. So bodybuilders absolutely need to eat more all the time because they're all the time repairing muscle. When you do strength-based training, a lot of it is nervous system based, and you don't have as much muscle damage to recover from when you're taking off days. If you're only training 3 or 4 days a week, you don't need as much food as somebody who trains 5, 6, 7 days a week. Okay? So those are going to be the mistakes we see commonly is eating too much before or after the workout, and then eating too much on off days. So again, what you should have is normal food with emphasis on slow digesting carbs, okay, as the energy source at the meals 1, 2, 3 hours before the workout, and then just having some glucose during the workout, liquid glucose, to give you some little boost of energy there at the time. But you don't need to add a lot of calories. You simply just need to make sure that what you're eating is adequate and it's carb based, and then just drink some glucose for some fun energy. Okay. Now, bodybuilders, you absolutely need to eat. Okay. You're in the gym, you're tearing up a lot of muscle. One day you're healing the legs while you're creating, more damage in the chest on that same day. So there's an enormous amount of muscle damage going on. So you need normal eating, lots of carbs. Okay. And then during the workout, you can absolutely throw in extra carbs, whether that's glucose, or sometimes they'll do different types of fancy carbs and supplements. But in general, you can have some carbs during the workout as well. So we've talked about intra-workout drinks before, and those are extremely helpful with people who do bodybuilding volume work. So that's going to help you really, really grow and make sure you maximize your growth and minimize muscle loss or muscle wasting. So let me look up that intra-workout number. So we have intra-workout drinks is podcast 93. So that's definitely something you should look at. Okay. If you haven't listened to that podcast, it breaks down kind of the science or the idea of what should be in an intra-workout drink. And it's especially important for people who do bodybuilding style workouts. Okay. And again, the mistakes we see commonly in bodybuilding is extremes in calories. So they'll tend to try to eat a whole bunch of food before or after the workout, and then they'll miss meals and not pay attention to eating enough between workouts. Okay. So you're always recovering and repairing as a bodybuilder. So your calories actually should be relatively steady stated with some, peaks before the training. And I would argue you don't need much of a peak afterwards. You just need to have enough carbs in your meals so that way by the next time you work out, your glycogen stores are back to full. But you don't need to fill them immediately right after the workout in one single meal. So really the meal before the workout, all you're looking to do is just top off glycogen stores. So if you've been doing really good with your nutrition up to that meal, you don't need a big ass meal because you already should have your glycogen filled. So really bodybuilding is being really consistent and having everything in place all the time. You're not going to have big spikes in valleys, and you're not going to have a lot of ups and downs. There's not going to be a lot of extremes to your food. You're just going to kind of eat the same thing steadily all the time. Okay? So that's going to be kind of the biggest mistake we'll see people make is having peaks and valleys. So they're not eating enough between the workouts and they're overeating around their workouts. And then that would show in the sense that they aren't the leanest composition they could have when that's actually their goal as a bodybuilder. So they need to be careful of that. Now, the last one we'll talk about here is CrossFit. So CrossFit, you need normal healthy eating. Again, you want to do carb-focused meals. Okay, and the meal's 1 to 2 hours before the workout. And you can also do glucose drinks. And I would argue that glucose drinks are great depending on what type of training you have going on that day. So if you have some quick kind of like circuit style, like I don't know all of the CrossFit terminology. I've worked with coaches and I've worked with people who've gone to the CrossFit Games, but I don't get into all the terminology of all that stuff often with them. I just tell them what I need them to do. So, like they have like I guess like WODs or whatever they are. So where you might do like say a circuit of 3 events, it might take up to 20 minutes. Then you're going to take a really long break. Then you'll do some max effort and technique style work on some Olympic lifts. And then maybe you'll do another kind of like a circuit of 3 or 4 events for 20, 30 minutes, or even a 10-minute blast at the end. So between those things, you can have some glucose. So that way, by the end of the workout, you're not drained and dead. So you don't have to have necessarily a big glucose burst at the beginning of the workout. You can actually have it as like an intra-workout drink, like bodybuilders would. So the biggest mistakes I see in the CrossFit athletes I've worked with is they're ridiculously underfed, absolutely underfed. They try to do these keto diets compared with an activity that would be extremely carb dependent, and then they're trying to eat in an anti-carb dependent way. So it's absolutely stupid because they're doing contrasting. They're contrasting their training and their nutrition, which is never going to work well. So almost every single coach and athlete I've worked with in CrossFit was underfed. When we fed them a little bit more, they actually got leaner because they were actually under eating, and they actually got better performance, not even because I'm a genius and I helped them with technique and programming in that amazing of a way. They were simply just underfueled as a machine. So we've talked about like the dangers of calories, like eating too little. And I see that all the time with CrossFit athletes. So we see underfed, and then they're extremely caffeine dependent. So they'll abuse the shit out of caffeine drinks because they don't have the energy they should have from their food. Okay? And they don't match, like I was saying earlier, they don't match their fuel sources to the way they use their fuels. So the type of training CrossFit athletes do is a ridiculously carb dependent, glucose dependent style training. But yet they try to follow ketogenic diets, so it's just dumb. So, and that's why a lot of them are underfed and underperformed and under-recovered. So that's why they get a lot of aches and bumps and bruises and annoyances and joints. They try to wrap everything in, those latex bands and stuff. And I know all that stuff. I know all about floss bands, lacrosse balls. I know everything about movement therapies. So I do movement therapies on people every single week, like all the time. So we even sell compression therapy rollers out of my gym. So I am well aware of the therapies that are out there, but those are meant to be temporary fixes or ways to temporarily address. They're not things you should do every day. So you should not have to use that stuff, therapy movements, every damn day. That means your training is not matching or your recovery is not matching. And a lot of time in CrossFit athletes, it's their recovery through nutrition. Their nutrition is inadequate to fully recover their joints and their connective tissues. So therefore, they're starting to have aches and pains in those areas, stiffnesses, pops, cracks, things that feel tight. So they try to do therapies all over the place to alleviate the issue, but they're never correcting the issue. So that's what I see all the time with CrossFit athletes. Okay? Now, what if somebody is vegan? Okay, and they have some restrictions due to that. What if somebody wants to follow a ketogenic diet? I've talked before in past podcasts how a ketogenic diet is not a great idea. So if you just don't know how to eat carbs correctly, avoiding them for the rest of your life is a pretty stupid goal. You're going to eventually need to eat carbs in your life. So it's better to learn how to eat them correctly than to just say, I'm not going to eat carbs at all. And then intermittent fasting, we've talked about that. That's absolutely stupid as well. So it doesn't follow the science of how food works best for our body. Can you get weight loss results doing ketogenic and intermittent fasting diets? Hell yeah, okay, because they're calorie restrictive. So you're going to lose weight. But are you going to feel the best you can feel? Are you going to perform the best you can perform? Are you going to have the best body composition of fat mass versus muscle mass? Hell no. No, 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 no. Okay? So the best thing, whether you do vegan, ketogenic, whether you do intermittent fasting, whether you eat like a normal person, and whether you do CrossFit, bodybuilding, strength, or cardio only workouts, all of the right ways to eat, okay, how to fuel your workouts, they all start with the basics. Again, if I'm going to build a building, I have to have the foundation, I have to have the framework, and then I put on the ornamental shit. Okay? So what is your foundation? What is your framework? Is it correct? So are you eating the right amount of food per day? How do you know? Are you eating the right amount of protein? How do you know? Are you eating the right fuel sources at the right times compared to when you want to be active? How do you know? So I talk to people all the time, and I'm like, oh, you have enough protein? Yeah. Well, how much you having? Well, I kind of have protein with every meal. How much per meal? Well, I'll sometimes have this, and no one ever gives me a damn answer. Okay, so it's not like you need to know the exact calories or you need to know the exact grams, but you should have ideas of windows or values. Just saying I feel good is a stupid answer because you could feel better. Why would you leave that up to chance? So if you think you're doing something right, how do you know you were doing it right? So, some podcasts you can listen to if you want to get all this stuff right is in general in podcast number 41 titled Diet Right, What Matters Most. We talk about the most important components of nutrition. Okay, so in regards to that, the first thing that's most important is going to be calories and eating the right amount. How do we know how to do that? It's podcast 153. And also in podcast 426, we discuss why eating too little is not good for fat loss. So if you're trying to lose fat, there's actually too few of calories that you might be eating. So you need to make sure you have an adequate amount, not only to feel good and perform well, but to actually continue to lose weight. So people will actually stop losing fat because they're eating too little of calories. Okay? So 153 tells us how many calories we should be eating. 426 tells you why eating too little is not good. Then the next most important thing we need to know about is protein. And podcast 33 discusses that. How much protein do I need? And then we talk about meal timing and meal frequency. So meal timing is kind of like, when should I eat my meals? That's podcast 249. And meal frequency is how many meals a day should I have? And what are the effects of eating a large amount of meals or a few amount of meals? And which answer is best for me? That's podcast 329. Then to understand meal timing, you have to understand the digestion rate of different foods. So podcast 21 talks about carbs, podcast 29 talks about fats, and podcast 216 talks about different types of proteins and their digestion rates. So that's the information. Everything is at your fingertips. If you want to perform to your best, I just gave you the data to do that. If you want to look your best, I just told you the podcast to look those up. Okay? If you want to feel your best throughout the day, if you want to diet but not feel like crap all the time, if you want to exercise and not feel like crap all the time, everything you want to know is right there in those podcasts. Think of how good you could feel. Think of how fun it is to hit PRs. And how many PRs do you think you're missing just because you have your food wrong? Man, it'd be a bummer to miss out on what your true potential could be just because you found out you were under eating by a couple hundred calories a day. Or maybe you're mismanaging your fuel source. You're eating fats instead of carbs. And that's why you couldn't hit a new PR on time or a new PR on volume. That's why you couldn't get to the next step of your goals. Just these small little things are holding us back. But they're the small things of the big pictures, of the groundwork, the foundation that we need. Calories, protein, meal timing. That's what we need to focus on. If you learn those three things, you can have success towards anything you want to achieve in physical health. Okay? It's just understanding what's the right way to eat. If you get that right, if you get that basic groundwork right, then you're going to have a ton of fun putting on the ornaments. Okay? So, go learn this stuff. These podcasts will be referenced, they'll be written, wherever you find the podcast you're listening to now. We'll reference the numbers. If you're ever not sure of them, you can always email us at brutalirongym@gmail.com, and I'll send you the numbers. Okay? So that's going to be our goal. Is how do we know if we're eating enough? How do we know if we're eating too little? How do we know if we're eating the right fuel source? Gotta look that up. Okay? Learn it, start implementing it, start practicing it. Okay? Cool. If you need any help with this, if you want help putting together a nutrition plan, of course, we're always happy to help. And we can put together nutrition plans for specifically your type of exercise and for your goal and where you are right now and how to get you where you want to be. Okay? So if you need help or if you want help, we're here to help. If you want to do it yourself, we tell you the podcast. So it's podcast 153, podcast 33, podcast 249, podcast 329. Learn those ones and you'll be good to go. Okay? Cool. If you need anything, let us know. Our email is brutalironggym@gmail.com. If you like the podcast, please share it with family and friends. The more people we help, the happier the world will be. Also, if you like this information, you can find more from us on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter, Brutal Iron Gym. And if you have any questions, feedback, or suggestions, we'd love to hear from you. The podcast is for you, so we want to know what you want to learn about. You can tell us at our email at brutalironggym@gmail.com. As always, I hope this was helpful, and thank you for listening. And thank you for watching.